What if I told you that every car shopper today is more than willing than ever? In fact, they're eager to come to your store and to pay a premium to buy the cars off your lot. Today we're going to uncover the science behind shopper decision making, and we're going to discuss how to influence and motivate customers to buy your vehicles. This is all based on a huge amount of data from both inside and outside the automotive industry, as well as the tens of millions of conversations that we've had at Active Engage for dealerships and manufacturers and OEMs over the last 19 years or so. And there's a focus on the last 24 months because of a lot of the technological updates that have happened in the industry. So, before we start talking about cars, I want to talk about another expensive purchase. And let's talk about watches for a second. Let's talk about another expensive purchase. Let's talk about expensive watches. When I first started working at car dealerships a very long time ago, there was sort of this cult of cool watches where I learned very quickly that I could identify who a general manager was or who a manager was or who the best salesperson was kind of by the watch that they were wearing. So it was very interesting to me, and I wanted to become a part of that group. So I started thinking about buying a watch, and I started looking at what other people were wearing, and I started paying attention to that. So if you were going to join this, you would do the same. You might look at some celebs, you might talk to some owners, you would probably get a quick review from some people to try to understand what they like or don't like about the watch. You would ask about reliability, what else they had looked at, why they had chosen the one that they had, maybe warranty, maintenance issues on the watch. And then you would start researching these options and the cost differences of the watches on your own. You might go to a website, you might create a submission in hopes that you would start to have a conversation with somebody at the place that you were going to buy the watch. And for me, I want to know at this point, why do you want that conversation at that point? What are you looking for now that you've already done the research, you've already found out everything about the watches that you're looking at? Why is it important to have a conversation? For me, this is an expensive watch. I've looked at all these stores. They all seem reputable. They all are recognized by the manufacturers that I'm interested in. So now I'm evaluating the customer experience. That's exactly what I'm looking to do right now. And that becomes my priority at this point, mainly because everything else is about the same. They all have the same brands, they have the same options, they have the same watches. I want a conversation because I want to understand exactly who I'm going to be dealing with, what type of service I'm about to expect, or what I should get from that particular dealer, and what's going to happen during the period that I own that watch, if I'm going to be able to rely on the people and the company that I'm buying the watch from. Again, for me, and statistically for most people, the key factor in making this decision whether to purchase has to do more with the experience and less with the price, especially with these high-ticket items. What will motivate me is how I'm treated and even the amount of interest that the salesperson has in getting me through this process and helping me. Do they care about me? Do I feel like I'm an important customer to them, or do I just feel like I'm a number? Am I a challenge for them to close? Am I just a target? What I really want is to buy from someone who really gets me, who I feel is helping me through the process. This guy is not the guy, by the way. I don't want someone who's just going to puke up data all over me, data that I already know because I've already done the research and I've already found out what I'm mostly interested in. And I don't want someone who's just going to try to maneuver to try to get me into the dealership, possibly with the promise of a relationship later. I really want to feel important right now during this particular interaction. This is an expensive watch for me, and there may be other watches that are more expensive for sure, but for me, this is really expensive and it's very important. I want to believe that the seller understands that, and that he or she makes me feel that doing this is important to them as well. For a shopper to make a commitment to spend their hard-earned money on something as significant as a premium watch, there must be an established baseline of trust. I took a great quote from the 6 Seconds website, which is a global marketing organization, and it said, "Trust is the foundation of strong relationships, organizational cultures, and global economies. And the research shows that vendors must invest in their customers to develop that trust." Fast responses may give some answers, but they don't motivate customers to buy. Speed does not equal trust. Trust is only achieved through consistent, reliable actions that showcase your integrity, empathy, and care. In other words, trust is massively influenced by emotion. According to Cox Automotive, 81% of car buyers today say trust is the #1 factor in their final purchase decision. If trust isn't established for these people, they're going to take their business elsewhere. Almost everything else about the purchase at that point is irrelevant. Then why does trust matter so much to these shoppers? According to the market research Salsify, buying a product is a relationship. This is the core of why trust matters to shoppers. They're not just purchasing your products, they're building relationships with the sellers who sell those products. So as a dealer, you're not competing with others on the amount of data that you can supply. You're competing with others for their trust. So by the time a customer reaches you, their decision has already been shaped by the many websites and the research sites all around the web that they've already looked at. And social media is a great example of this. According to the research, it's the preferred discovery channel for Gen Zers and millennials. And it's the 3rd-ranked research channel across all generations. So why is that? Well, by their nature, these social platforms are relational. They're about connecting with friends and connecting with family and acquaintances, and now also connecting with vendors. These types of connections are exclusively human connections, and they're replacing other more traditional forms of information. Here they can see what other people like and why, and they can read reviews and they can research options. So the question is, if customers no longer need to spend time at or even with the dealership and the dealership personnel, then how do you, as dealership personnel, start to build that trust? Let's look at some empirical data about how to do that. In 2026, a research study from the Harvard Business School, and yes, I'm talking about Harvard, found that most significant customer purchases can only occur after trust has been established. That backs up both the Cox and the Salsify studies. What's more interesting about this is that trust makes 68% of shoppers pay more for those products. 54% of shoppers from that same survey highlighted that it was mainly the customer experience that made them trust the seller and the process during the purchase. The Harvard study in particular also found that one of the best ways to establish trust is through paying attention and connecting with your customers interpersonally. Be authentic, be human, be vulnerable, utilizing active listening and helping the other person to feel understood were notable actions that aided building trust in the sales process. And why does this build trust? What is it about this approach that has a direct impact on the trust building process? And again, the answer is emotions. So let's take a look at emotions. 2 separate studies from the Harvard Business School found that 90% of purchasing decisions are in fact driven by emotions. A separate study from Amy Cuddy, who is a social psychologist from the Harvard Business School, conducted extensive research about how we evaluate people. And the research indicates that most people respond more positively to those who come across as trustworthy rather than those who exude confidence. This is an emotional reaction, not a logical one. That same study suggests that we need to rethink the way that we make first impressions. The deeper that you can interpersonally connect with your customers during this first interaction with you, the more likely you are to gain their trust and to complete a transaction. The key here is that the trust factor is not about trusting the data, it's about the customer trusting the person that they're working with, and that's you or your representative at the dealership. A report by Charles Duhigg, who's the Pulitzer Prize winner and New York Times bestselling author of The Power of Habit, said that you need to ask questions to truly connect with your customers and align the conversation to meet the need of why the customer engaged in the first place. And it's not just any type of question. It's these special kinds of questions which are what is known as deep questions. And if you haven't read this book, The Power of Habit, I absolutely advise you to do so. It's a really excellent book, especially if you're in sales. So it was Harvard, again, that defined these deep questions as inquiries that invite the customer to talk about their values, their beliefs, and their experiences. Instead of engaging the customer in facts, you should engage them about how they feel, because when you do that, they tend to reveal what they are really trying to accomplish and why, and then you're able to engage them in that way. They'll not only tell you what they want, but they'll tell you how they want you to see them and what matters to them most. Studies show that this is so powerful because these types of questions allow all of us to be vulnerable, and vulnerability and reciprocal vulnerability is the key to allowing us to connect with other people. It's a very core human interaction that drives not only connection, but motivation, loyalty, and commitment to the sale. That's how you get to the sale. In the tens of millions of conversations that we've had at my company, we found this to be indisputably true. While data is certainly meaningful and part of the conversation, it's not powerful, it's not a motivator, it's just content for part of the conversation. What makes the difference between a good engagement and a bad one is our connection to each other, the buyer and the seller. It's that connection and the emotion that's derived that motivates customers and drives them to proceed with you. So let's get into the process a little bit, and we'll start at the beginning with the first impression. And these are extremely important. I'm sure that you've heard the saying many times before, a good first impression is everything. And that is absolutely true, but why is that true? So a separate study by Princeton published in Psychological Science reveals that humans decide whether a person is trustworthy in as little as 100 milliseconds, and that's just a little over, just about a tenth of a second. This doesn't mean that they've given you their trust at this point, but it does show that first impressions have a massive impact on their emotional intelligence, and that they are more open to trusting you at that point if they make that determination. Now, what are the business consequences of a good first impression? Well, according to Zoom, a positive first impression increases customer loyalty, with 72% of customers likely to spread the word about a company after a really good first impression. And alternatively, 88% of customers, online customers, are less likely to return to a vendor site after a bad experience. Additionally, these first impressions are hard to change once they're made. 54% of respondents in the study believe their first impressions are generally accurate. And another poll revealed that 35% of people find it difficult to change a first impression. That is a huge ask to accomplish in just 100 milliseconds. A good digital first impression is critical because users form like a gut feeling about you and your store's credibility and your professionalism almost instantly. Humans are wired to make these snap decisions. In 2026, where digital touchpoints often exceed physical ones, these snap judgments act with like a halo effect, where a positive interaction makes users more likely to trust subsequent content and even kind of forgive mistakes that may happen during the entire interaction. Most first impressions now are handled online, which means that ultimately the first digital handshake determines the margin on the sale based on all of this data that we've been talking about. That's a lot of pressure for a website or a chat widget, and hopefully the tech and the people that are using it are both up to the customer's expectations. So let's take a look at first impressions. This is an online conversation that a prospective customer gave us to use as an example of their current interactions just before we onboarded them. And this conversation was actually via text. But I'm going to show it to you here as an in-store experience so that you can better understand what it feels like for the customer during this interaction. For those of you that like to listen to your store's phone calls and you get a little frustrated or you think, what's going on here? Get ready. This is basically the 2026 version of what that is.
I need your phone number to begin the conversation.
Hi, I don't see a Carfax available on that Accord.
Thanks for texting us. We will be with you shortly. In the meantime, please save our contact information for quick replies.
Here's a link. Hi, Sarah. This is Jerry from Anytown Automotive of Danbury. You can search for the vehicle history using this Carfax link. Just use the available filters on Carfax to find the 2019 Honda Accord Hybrid Touring. Are you mainly interested in the vehicle's history, or are there other details you're looking for?
Mainly the history information. Hello?
So hopefully that showed you with a little more clarity what it feels like for the customer. This is an actual conversation. We have lots of these, by the way, to show, and it's valuable to interpret it where you're actually seeing what it would look like in the store, because you should be mirroring what really happens in the store. That's where you're really effective at building. Most people are more effective at building relationships because they're used to doing it in person. But just because a first impression is on the phone or online doesn't mean that the expectation of the customer is not what they would get in store. In fact, if the conversation like this one is a text conversation, then the customer does not have the benefit of hearing intonation or voice inflection. It's a bit more complicated than standing in front of someone, but truly it just takes focus and some thoughtfulness and possibly some training for your personnel to become really effective at doing this. But you can do it. Again, it's about being present and open and truly interested in your customers and their needs and their opinions while you're interacting with them. If you're using contractors to do this for you, either online or on the phone or in person, then you need to be sure that they're engaging thoughtfully, asking these deep questions, showing true interest in the customer, and just generally being open. What I think we really want in a sales team is a motivational guru like Steve Jobs, always on point to just close the deal. Now that requires training your people to think this way, to engage the customer's emotional connection to you and to the dealership and to the product that they're buying. That was the entire point of the "and just one more thing" at these Apple events, right? It was creating anticipation and excitement about what it was that he was about to tell you, and that made the audience engage much more emotionally in what they got, and that's why he always got that big applause afterwards. When I was young, I kind of learned about this idea of treating customers and paying attention to them and being thoughtful about the way that we interact with them from my next door neighbor, this guy that lived next to us when I was growing up. His name was Richie, and he was the #1 Cadillac salesperson in the country, just coincidentally. And I saw that he would interact with all these customers because what he would do, a lot of times he had become a master mechanic before he was a salesperson. And so he would talk to people about the cars in the showroom, and he would interact with them, and constantly trying to appeal to their emotional intelligence and their connection to him. He would discuss with them that he would always be available even if they had questions about the vehicle or if they had some problems with the vehicle. So constantly, like every day, and especially on the weekends when he wasn't at the store, or during the week when he wasn't at the store, then customers would come by the house and he would look at the cars or kind of check things out and even exchange cars between him and the customer with his own car to take it into the store. But it was that relationship with these customers, it was the way he made them feel that really brought these customers back to them, and then he would get tons of referrals from these customers. I obviously had that relationship, not just from when I was little, but as I got older, he maintained that position for a long time. And that entire condition lasted for a very long time. So Over a long period of time, he was still the #1 Cadillac salesperson. It was all because of how he chose to build these relationships with those customers. Data points are not what made Ritchie successful. It was his relationship that set the success. And that's the way you should be thinking about these things when you're having conversations. Remember, while data may have some relevance, sales is about relating to the customer. That's why bots and tech cannot deliver experiences like Steve Jobs and Ritchie. They just deliver data. I bring this up because I see a lot of dealerships that think that just delivering a bunch of data in these conversations, however they may be happening, is what's going to be satisfying the customer. But that's not sales. That's barely customer service, and that's not what these customers are looking for when they're engaging you, as we spoke about during the watch story. So everything that we've presented here to you so far about this basically reaffirms that statement to you. You can use things like AI for research and for data and to support your people, but you always want to use people to sell regardless of the medium, because they're the ones that are going to build the relationships. So this is the sales funnel that most of you are used to seeing. This is the one that I grew up with, but while it's been around for a long time, it's no longer right. It kind of looks like one of these beer bongs that I used to use in college, where you'd pour something in at the top and everything would kind of easily and quickly flow out through the bottom. And you would basically go from 0 to drunk, or 0 to sale in this case, very quickly. But that's not how the customer journey works anymore. It actually looks a little more like this. So customers start thinking about a vehicle. They saw an ad or they saw a car on the road, and maybe something in social media drew their attention, and now they're interested in that vehicle, and they look at some pics on the web and they check some reviews. Often customers tend to drop off for a bit until an ad or something on social picks them up again, and then they might go to a marketplace to get a better view of all the vehicles that meet their requirements, or an OEM site to get a little bit more detail about the vehicle. The journey to the sale is this kind of dance of back and forth where they're bouncing all over through this basically swirly straw on their way to the sale. And it's not the straight path that it used to be in the original funnel. So when they finally do get down to the area where they're going to take action, the dealership visit, the in-store visit, is really the last stop, not the first. Whereas your relationship building used to exist when they first walked into the store, now it's happening way in advance. So you still need to create that emotional engagement at their first connection, just like you would have if they came into the store, or when they had come into the store. The biggest effect of this new process is that it has moved all of those initial points, those stops in the process, up front and online. And that's the paradigm shift here. It's a shift in how people buy cars, in the journey they take, and what they expect at each point in the sales funnel after they enter it. In my opinion, the stores that will win are the ones who choose to align their digital presence with their in-store presence. Connect with your customers at an emotional level, at a very human level. Be their advocate. Invest in your relationship with them, and build the best possible experience that you can with them when it starts, which is almost always online. Use AI to enhance the awareness for your salespeople. Use it to train your salespeople. Use it as their assistant, but not as your representative for your store facing the customer. It kind of makes me a little crazy that your website is not there for customer service. Your website is a billboard for sales. It's specifically there for sales. So the conversation is not a customer service conversation. It's not just to have a question, answer the question, and say thanks very much, come back to us whenever you need. You should be using it. It's one of the best sales tools that you have. And so it requires a sales representative. It can't be a predetermined conversation like a customer service one can be. But you always want a real person in front of your customers. You should mirror your showroom's engagement online. Talk to your online customers like they're standing there in your store right in front of you. because they are expecting you to give them that particular experience and that level of attention. If they're engaging you, they're looking for a friend or an advocate. They're not, regardless of the question, they're not just looking for the data to come back to them as a response. They want you to inquire. They want you to be interested in them. They want someone to listen to them and to help them through their buying journey. Treat them like they're right there in the store with you. So we looked at this a little bit earlier. We took a real online conversation, text conversation, that was not so good. So let's look at another one right now. This one is also an actual transcript. It's just taken directly from an actual transcript that we dramatized so that you can again see it more clearly on how it impacts the customer. We chose this one because it's actually super common conversation that our consumer experts have with the customers at the dealerships. This is a dealership conversation that we often see.
Hi, I don't see a Carfax available on that Accord.
Hello, my name is Natasha. I'm happy to take a look into any available Carfax we may have for that car.
While I pull up that vehicle, do you have any other questions about it?
No, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Let me see what I can find for you. Just a moment.
Sure.
I love the navigation feature on this 2019 Accord. I'm not showing a Carfax currently listed, but I'll request we share the history we have with you.
Okay, thank you.
How soon are you looking to get into this Honda Accord?
My son is actually looking. He just totaled his car just shy of a month ago, so pretty quickly.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me know.
I'm sorry to hear about your son's car. We'd love to have him in this Accord as soon as possible. Would you like to set up a test drive for the Accord?
Possibly. I live about 2 hours away. Maybe tomorrow afternoon?
No problem. How about I pencil you in tentatively for 3 p.m. tomorrow, and if anything changes, we can reschedule. Does this work for you?
Yes, perfect.
Fantastic. I have you penciled in for tomorrow at 3 p.m.
Okay, thanks for your help.
All right, so did that look a little more like the way you would have handled that kind of conversation in the store? So when I'm talking about engaging these customers, it's more fluid like this. It's more interest in the customer. There's not really a ton of data that transpired here, but you can see the interaction with the customer. And again, this is an actual conversation that, it's a really common one. This is a particular actual conversation that was had. But I want to make the point again that this was an online conversation at a dealership website, also a text conversation. And that's what it should be looking at, whether it's on the phone or online in chat or on a text or wherever it is. That's what all of your conversations, you shouldn't be changing them based on the medium. So don't be this guy. You're not hawking cars. It's not about the price, and it's generally not about the inventory either. It's almost never about getting more vehicle data because they're doing that on their own in advance. You know, most people's computers, when they open their browser, it's going directly to Google in the first place. If they want to know something, they're going to type it in right on that line and figure out what they need to know. It's about triggering an emotional response with your prospect that makes them want to trust you. It's about the experience. According to a Forbes study, 58% of customers will not only choose the option that they believe has a better customer experience, but they will even pay more for that experience. And that percentage goes up when you narrow the customer base to just millennials and Gen Zers. And so it's about building trust and making a real connection to your customers. It's about being earnest. It's about being interested in your customers and authentic. Honing in on the emotional connection and building the relationship is going to allow you to work with less effort, close with more profit, and do so much more often. Do this commonly. If you guys have any questions, I have all of these statistics and lots more. That's why I have to keep looking at these because there's so much information, but I'm happy to answer any questions for you. And you can just email me or you can contact us at Active Engage, and I'm happy to engage anybody. Thank you very much.